When someone loses their temper, you know what it really shows. That they've lost control. It might feel powerful in the moment, but the truth is, it exposes your weakness. Emotional outbursts are not signs of strength. They're leaks in your armor. You don't need to respond to every push, every insult, every disrespectful look or comment. You need to be in command of you, because every time you lose it, you give the world a key to your mind. And trust me, not everyone deserves access. Most people won't even know what to do with it except use it against you. Emotional mastery is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about being so grounded in yourself that you don't need to prove your strength through reaction. The loudest person in the room rarely holds the most power. It's the one who can feel every emotion but doesn't let any emotion run the show. That's control. That's power. Life is full of triggers. People will test you. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes without even knowing it. But your power isn't in how fast you can clap back or how loud you can get. It's in how little they can shake your peace. When your emotions are dictated by every external influence, you're not leading yourself. You're being led. If a stranger's words can control your mood for the rest of the day, then they've got more power over your life than you do. You've handed them the remote to your nervous system. And that's not strength. That's vulnerability. That's exposure. So you learn to feel everything, but you show nothing. You absorb it. You process it. But you don't hand your energy to just anyone. Especially those who haven't earned the right to influence your mind. Control isn't natural. You don't wake up emotionally bulletproof. You build that kind of discipline through consistent, intentional work. You train for it. The same way you train your body, you train your reactions. It starts small. That moment in traffic where you feel rage rise in your chest. That conversation that triggers an old wound. That unexpected comment from someone who knows exactly how to get under your skin. Those are your reps. That's your gym. That's where you grow. You don't let the world dictate when you explode. You learn to stay in your body, stay in your breath. You become the one in charge of your experience. Not the world, not the stress, not the noise. Why do you think people test your emotions in the first place? Because if they can shake you, they own you. That's how manipulation works. They poke until they find the spot that makes you react. And once they do, they'll keep coming back to it. But when they realize you don't break, you don't snap, you don't hand them your energy, they stop trying. They move on. Because your silence becomes their frustration. Your control becomes your defense. And your peace becomes your weapon. You want to be unshakable. Then stop reacting to everything. The world doesn't need to know how you feel in every moment. Sometimes the best move is to observe, to analyze, to detach. Especially when someone wants a reaction, you don't give them what they want. You give yourself what you need: distance, clarity, self-command. People who truly have power rarely show it through emotion. They don't need to. Their presence does the talking. Their control is loud enough. So the next time someone tries to bring chaos into your space, ask yourself, do I really want to give this moment access to my mind? Is this person worth disturbing my peace for? Because if the answer is no, then let it go. Let them throw their tantrum. Let them talk. Let them try. But you don't flinch. You don't match that energy. You stay still. You stay focused. You stay disciplined. That's what makes you untouchable. That's what makes you different. And here's the truth. When you learn to master your emotions, it changes your life. Not just your mindset. Your entire existence. You become the one people can't manipulate. The one who doesn't break under pressure. The one who leads from strength, not from reaction. Because in a world full of noise, the one who remains calm holds the most power. So if you want to protect your peace, your mind, your energy, stop reacting, start mastering. Because emotional mastery isn't just a habit, it's your armor, it's your strategy. And in this world, if you don't learn to control your emotions, someone else will. Pressure doesn't build character, it reveals it. When life hits hard, when someone disrespects you, when your environment gets chaotic, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall back on what you've trained yourself to be. You default to your habits, your routines, your inner discipline. And if you've never trained for calm, if you've never practiced restraint, if you've never rehearsed silence when everything in you wants to react, then you'll always break. Always fold. That's why emotional strength isn't built in the moment of the storm. It's built before it. In silence. In the small moments. It's built when nobody's watching. When you choose patience instead of pettiness. when you control your tone instead of raising your voice, when you walk away from what would have destroyed you 6 months ago because you've trained to be better than that. You don't learn calm when everything is perfect. You build calm in discomfort, in tension, in stress. You train like it's a battlefield, because it is. You won't always get the luxury of peace. You won't always be surrounded by people who speak to you with respect. The world doesn't care if you're having a bad day. So your emotional stamina has to be stronger than your triggers. You can't just say, "I'll be calm when people stop pushing me." That's weakness disguised as a condition. If the only time you can remain composed is when no one challenges you, then you haven't trained, you've coasted. Calm is a skill, and like every skill, it gets sharper with practice, real practice, in real moments. When someone tests you and you want to snap, but you don't. When someone lies on your name, but you stay silent and let truth be your advocate. When someone disrespects you and instead of proving your power with words, you prove it with restraint. That's your training ground. That's your discipline. You need to rehearse control when you're not angry, so it's there when you are. If you wait until the moment of impact to figure out how to handle it, you've already lost. That's like waiting for a fire to learn how to use the extinguisher. You don't learn under pressure. You perform under pressure, which means you prepare before it. You anticipate the heat. You study your reactions. You know your emotional blind spots. You know what sets you off, and you build yourself so strong that even your triggers don't get to run the show anymore. That takes intention. That takes consistency. That takes inner work. Not once, every day. Every time you stay calm, you're building a new neural pathway. You're rewiring your default. You're showing your nervous system that it's safe not to explode. You're proving to yourself that you are in control. Not your emotions, not the person in front of you. You. And the more you do that, the faster it becomes your automatic response. You start to walk into situations that used to break you, and now you don't even flinch. You don't freeze. You don't panic. You respond with power, with precision, with presence. That doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how the world sees you. People start noticing. They don't mess with you the same. They don't test you the same, because energy doesn't lie. And when you walk in with the calm of someone who's done the work, it speaks louder than any reaction ever could. There's a level of peace that can't be touched once you've earned it. But you don't get there by accident. You build it. You build it by sitting with discomfort instead of avoiding it, by breathing through tension instead of feeding it, by choosing your response instead of reacting impulsively. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it takes effort. But the reward is everything. Because when the world goes loud and you stay grounded, you win. Not because you shouted louder, but because you didn't need to. Your presence did the talking. And that only happens when you've trained for it. So stop waiting for peace to find you. Build it, practice it, own it. Wake up every day and decide who you're going to be, not based on how others act, but based on what you've committed to. You're not here to react to the world. You're here to command yourself in it. And once you start doing that, there's not a single situation that can pull you out of character. Because your calm isn't a feeling, it's a decision. One you've already made long before the chaos came. People will always try to get in your head. That's the game. The moment you let someone make you react, they've already won. Not because they're right, not because they're strong, but because they accessed something they should have never had permission to touch. And that's your mental space. Your peace, your internal world. Too many people walk around renting out their emotions to strangers, critics, and chaos. They give away their attention like it's free. They argue with people who don't matter. They respond to comments that carry no value. And in doing so, they leak power. They lose control. They start playing on someone else's terms. If someone can shift your energy with a single word, a glance, a tone, they've got more control over your life than you do. You've allowed someone to occupy space in your mind without paying rent, without contribution, without any real presence in your life. You have to understand how much of your life is shaped by what you allow to disturb you. How much time do you lose replaying someone's disrespect? How much energy do you burn crafting the perfect clapback? How often do you delay your own growth just to prove a point to someone who never mattered in the first place? That's not power. That's distraction. That's letting the world steer your focus instead of standing guard at the gate of your mind. People will talk. People will provoke. People will test boundaries. But whether or not you let them live in your head, that's on you. You get to decide who has that access. You get to choose what gets your response. And the truth is, not everything deserves one. There's a type of confidence that doesn't argue. A self-assurance that doesn't explain. When you know who you are, you don't get pulled into every battle. You don't get dragged into emotional quicksand. You rise above it. Not because you're weak, but because you're built different. Because your standards are higher. Because you value your energy too much to waste it on noise. Emotional control isn't about suppression. It's about strategy. You don't ignore disrespect. You just don't let it shake you. You handle it without losing your balance. You correct people without losing yourself. You hold your boundary without giving them a piece of your peace. That's where your edge comes from. Not from how loud you can respond, but from how little they can disrupt your stillness. And here's something people rarely talk about. Your silence is often louder than your reaction. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't respond, that eats at them more than anything you could have said. Because it tells them they don't have control. It shows them you're not reactive. You're calculated. And that kind of presence, it unsettles people, it shifts the dynamic. Now they're not just dealing with a person. They're dealing with someone who refuses to be played. Someone who's mastered the art of holding their position, even when pushed. That doesn't just protect your peace. It changes the game. It flips the power dynamic. And suddenly, they're not the one in control anymore. People will always try to push your buttons, especially when they see you've got something they don't. Composure, clarity, confidence. That bothers the insecure. Because when they can't match your calm, they'll try to drag you into their chaos. But here's the truth, nobody can pull you into a storm unless you walk in willingly. And that's what emotional detachment teaches you. It teaches you to observe, not absorb. To witness the chaos but not be swallowed by it. To feel the pull of a trigger, but not let it yank you out of your power. You become immune to the bait, immune to the noise. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned to care more about your peace than their validation. You've got to stop letting people who don't know your story narrate your emotional world. You've got to stop giving power to people whose only goal is to take it from you. When someone sees they can't shake you, when they realize their words bounce off you instead of getting inside, they lose interest. They stop pressing because they feed off your reaction. They want your attention. They want your emotions. So when you starve them of that, when you stay poised, collected, focused, that's when you win. Every time you choose silence over reaction, every time you walk away instead of engaging, every time you protect your energy instead of proving your worth, you're reclaiming your space. You're reinforcing your standard. You're reminding yourself and the world that your peace is not up for negotiation. Control isn't passive. It's intentional. You don't drift into emotional strength. You step into it. You claim it. And part of that power means deciding who gets to be in your head and who doesn't. Not everyone deserves a reaction. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every attack deserves your presence. Because when you've done the work, when you've built the foundation, when you've fortified your internal world, chaos can knock, but it doesn't get in. When someone says something that pushes your buttons, your instinct is to respond instantly. Fire back. Defend. Correct. That's human, but it's not power. Power doesn't rush. Power doesn't get baited into speed. Power lives in the pause. That space between what happens and what you choose to do next, that's where all your control lives. That pause is a weapon. It's a shield. It's what separates you from everyone else who lives on impulse, because the people who lose their temper the fastest are the ones being led by it. And you're not here to be led by emotion. You're here to command it. There is no rule that says you have to react immediately. That urgency you feel, that's not truth. That's ego. That's your nervous system getting hijacked. And if you don't take a moment to breathe, to observe, to steady yourself, you'll default into reactions you regret. Most damage isn't done by what was said to us. It's done by what we said back without thinking. One careless response, one emotional outburst, one decision made from anger instead of awareness. That's all it takes to lose respect, damage relationships, or destroy your own peace. That's why the pause is everything. You build it like muscle. You make it second nature. Think about how many times someone triggered you, and you answered too fast. How many times you regretted reacting right away. How many times you wished you could pull your words back. The world praises speed, but emotional intelligence moves slower. It listens first. It studies the tone. It watches the situation. It doesn't just act, it acts with precision. Because anyone can respond. Few can respond from composure. And that's what makes you different. You don't just say the first thing that comes to your mouth. You filter it. You ask yourself, does this serve me? Does this serve the moment? Is this who I am, or is this who my anger is trying to be? You're not required to explain yourself right away. You're not obligated to make a decision on the spot. Silence is not weakness. It's strategy. It allows you to gather your thoughts. It gives you the upper hand. When someone tries to provoke you, they expect heat. They expect you to fire back. But when you don't, when you just pause and let them sit in their own chaos, it shifts everything. Now they're dealing with someone who isn't reactive. Someone who chooses their words carefully, someone who isn't going to dance to their emotional tune. And that unsettles people, because silence is control, delayed response is discipline. That's not just mental strength, that's psychological power. The pause protects you. It creates distance between you and the emotion. And in that distance you find clarity. What feels like rage in the first 5 seconds often softens when you breathe. What looks like a threat often turns into noise when you sit with it. Not everything that comes at you deserves a reaction. Not every situation needs your voice right now. Sometimes the smartest move you can make is to say nothing, at least for the moment. Let the dust settle. Let the emotion settle. Then you respond not with heat, but with control. Not with force, but with focus. That's what makes people listen. That's what earns respect. Pausing doesn't mean you're avoiding. It means you're aligning. It means you're checking in with yourself before letting the world in. You're asking, is this mine to carry? Is this fight worth it? Is this the time, the tone, the truth I need to stand on? Or is this just ego knocking on my door, begging to be heard? You don't win by being first. You win by being right, internally. You win by being strategic, by being composed, by being consistent in who you are, no matter what's happening around you. That pause gives you your identity back. It gives you your voice back. It keeps you from being hijacked by the moment. People will mistake your pause for indecision. Let them. They'll misread your silence as weakness. Let them. Because what you're actually doing is gathering power. You're taking control of the narrative. You're choosing how this story ends. And while everyone else is busy reacting, spiraling, defending, you're steady. You're locked in. You're moving like someone who has already done the work. That kind of control can't be taught in crisis. It's built in discipline. In intention, in the hundreds of small moments you chose silence over shouting, stillness over speed, and that becomes who you are. Not just what you do eventually. People stop pushing you the same way. Because they realize they can't get a rise out of you. You don't take the bait. You don't get pulled into every petty drama. You're not moved by chaos because you've trained yourself to respond, not react. And when you do speak, it's deliberate. It's direct. It's calm. That voice carries more power than 100 loud ones, because it comes from a place of certainty. Not emotion, not fear. Certainty every single time you pause instead of snapping, every time you hold the line instead of crossing it, every time you stay silent long enough to choose the right response. You're strengthening the core of who you are. That's not a small thing. That's mastery. There's a fundamental truth most people ignore because it's uncomfortable to accept. You don't get to control how others treat you. You don't get to rewrite someone else's behavior, their attitude, or their tone. You can't make someone respect you. You can't force someone to act right. What you can control, what you are fully responsible for, is your energy, your reaction, your boundaries, and the space you give them in your life. The faster you accept that, the more power you reclaim. You stop chasing the illusion that everyone will behave how you want them to. You stop wasting your energy on fixing people who don't want to be fixed. You redirect that focus where it belongs. Back to yourself. Trying to control people is a losing battle. You can influence, you can lead, you can teach by example, but you cannot make people act right. That is their choice. Your job isn't to make them better. Your job is to protect your own space when they refuse to. Every time you let someone's chaos infect your mindset, every time you let their words dictate your mood, you've handed over your peace. That's not emotional strength. That's emotional dependency. You're waiting for the world to be kind before you allow yourself to be calm. And that's a trap, because people won't always be kind. Life won't always be fair, but you can always be grounded. You don't fight for control by demanding it from others. You gain it by mastering your own atmosphere. Your energy is your responsibility. You either protect it or you bleed it, and the bleeding usually starts with people you keep making excuses for. The ones who trigger you. The ones you keep around because you're afraid to cut ties. The ones who say the right thing and do the opposite. And instead of pulling back, you engage, you argue. You try to prove yourself. But here's the thing. Every time you try to get someone to act right, you're shifting your focus away from what actually matters: how you respond, how you protect your inner space, how you guard your mental peace like it's sacred, because it is. There's strength in walking away from situations you can't control. It's not giving up. It's not defeat. It's precision. It's understanding that your energy is a limited resource, and you don't pour it into black holes. You don't exhaust yourself trying to educate people who aren't listening. You don't burn out trying to fix environments that resist growth. You shift. You withdraw. You reclaim your center. Because leadership doesn't mean you carry everyone. It means you lead yourself first. That self-leadership is what separates emotional amateurs from emotional professionals. And the difference is how they handle what they can't control. The moment you realize that your peace is too valuable to hand over to someone else's immaturity, you move differently. You stop participating in drama. You stop letting people drag you into emotional warfare. You learn to listen without reacting, to observe without absorbing, to witness without engaging. You let people have their emotions, their opinions, their noise, and you don't make it yours. That takes work. That takes restraint. That takes inner strength most people don't want to build. Because it's easier to fight back than to walk away. It's easier to argue than to be silent. But emotional power doesn't live in what's easy. It lives in what strategic boundaries are not about punishing people. They're about protecting you. When someone's energy becomes a threat to your growth, you owe it to yourself to create space. That space is clarity. It's oxygen. It gives you room to remember who you are without the distortion of their noise. And it's not personal. It's necessary. Because people don't always change when you explain your pain. Sometimes they change when you stop giving them access to it. When you stop letting them pull you out of character. When you stop giving them your time, your mind, your power. You're not cold for doing that. You're responsible. Stop trying to manage people. Manage yourself. That's where the real discipline lies. The discipline to not respond to every provocation. The discipline to walk away when your ego wants to win. The discipline to stay in alignment with your values when someone's trying to bait you into stepping out of them. That kind of restraint is strength. That kind of silence is maturity. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone access to your emotions. Especially not people who have shown you they can't handle them. You don't get peace by controlling the world. You get it by refusing to let the world control you. That's what emotional independence looks like. You take ownership of your space, your time, your reactions. You stop explaining your standards and start enforcing them. You stop managing other people's emotions and start managing your own. Because you've learned that control isn't about domination. It's about discipline. It's about knowing when to speak and when to walk, when to stay and when to protect your space, when to engage and when to let the silence speak for you. You get stronger every time you stop trying to control what's outside of you and start focusing on what's inside. That's where your influence lives. That's where your energy lives. That's where the real work happens, not in changing them, but in building you. Resilience isn't something you turn on in a crisis. It's something you build in the quiet, in the routine, in the repetition of small habits that no one sees. The world wants to celebrate the moment you stay calm under pressure, but what they don't realize is that calm didn't come from nowhere. It was forged in the early mornings you didn't skip, in the workouts you didn't feel like doing, in the journal entries you wrote when your mind felt scattered, in the water you drank when your body wanted sugar, in the breath you took before speaking when anger surged through your chest. That calm was built long before the pressure came. That's why routines aren't just about productivity. They're about protection. The way you start your day, the way you treat your body, the way you organize your environment. It all sends a signal to your nervous system that says, I'm in control. Because the truth is, when life feels out of control, you fall back on the structure you've already built. You don't get to choose how the world behaves, but you absolutely get to choose how you prepare for it. And routines give you that structure. They remove the decision fatigue. They create order in chaos. They keep you anchored when everything outside of you is pulling you in different directions. A resilient person doesn't wake up hoping the day will be peaceful. They wake up prepared for whatever the day brings. And that preparation doesn't come from luck or genetics. It comes from discipline, from doing the things that make you stronger even when they don't feel good, from stacking small wins every day. You train your mind every time you choose action over avoidance. You train your focus every time you put the phone down and do the work. You train your confidence every time you do the thing you said you would, especially when no one's watching. That's how you earn your own trust. That's how you build that quiet strength that can't be faked under pressure. Your resilience is only as strong as the systems you put in place. And those systems live in your habits. They live in the way you move your body, because motion changes emotion. They live in what you feed yourself, because your brain can't focus if your body is inflamed. They live in how you breathe, how you sit, how you speak to yourself when no one else can hear. If you don't have control over your routine, you'll never have control over your reactions. Because when the storm hits, you don't have time to get ready. You either are or you're not. People think emotional strength is about big moments. Confronting someone, staying calm in an argument, holding your tongue when provoked. But the real strength is in the boring moments. The moment you choose the harder path when the easier one is right there. The moment you set your alarm even when you're tired. The moment you say no to distractions because your long-term peace matters more than short-term pleasure. That's the grit that makes you unshakable. That's the invisible work that builds the visible power. Every habit you build is either sharpening your edge or dulling it. There's no neutral. You're either feeding the part of you that leads or the part of you that reacts. And if you're not intentional, the reactive part always wins. Because that's your default. Your mind will always choose what's easy unless you train it not to. That's why routine matters. That's why structure matters. You don't wait until you're angry to practice calm. You build it into your life. You schedule your discipline. You automate your strength. So when life hits, you don't flinch. The strongest people are the most structured. Not because they're rigid, but because they've learned that chaos has no respect for those who are unprepared. If you live reactively, everything becomes an emergency. But if you live intentionally, nothing shakes you. Because you've already made the decision. You've already practiced the response. You've already set the standard for who you're going to be, no matter what comes your way. That's what your habits do. They remove the emotional guesswork. They remind you who you are when you're tempted to forget. There will always be days when your emotions want to take the wheel. That's not weakness. That's human. But if you've built the right routines, those emotions don't run your day. You still get up. You still do the work. You still hold your standard. Because discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you committed to. And that level of consistency doesn't just build results. It builds identity. You stop being the kind of person who loses their cool because someone pushed your button. You become the kind of person who's already done the work. So the button doesn't even trigger anymore. It's been deactivated by discipline. You want to become unshakable. Then look at how you spend your ordinary days. Look at what you do when nothing's wrong. Because how you do the ordinary determines how you handle the extraordinary. And if you train your habits to serve your peace becomes your default. Not just in calm moments. Especially in the storms,